Hello and welcome back to USC Trojans on Fan Nation podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Erlbaum, joined by my co-host, Jacob Hare. And the USC Trojans get the victory on Friday night against the University of Colorado, 55-17, their ninth victory of the season. The Trojans now sit at 9-1, another dominant performance by Caleb Williams and the USC offense. But more on that later, as now we turn our attention to the rest of the Pac-12. What a wild weekend it was. The Oregon Ducks fall to Washington. And then an even bigger upset is UCLA loses at home to Arizona. And my friend, what does this mean for USC going forward? And not only for winning the Pac-12, but possibly going to the Rose Bowl or even the college football playoff.
I mean, USC controls their own destiny at this point of the season. They have sole possession of the Pac-12 now that Oregon and UCLA has two losses. And look, USC plays UCLA this weekend, big rivalry game, and then they play Notre Dame, last game of the season. USC just needs to win and get to the Pac-12 championship and win that. If they want any remote shot at the college football playoffs, we have to take this 1 week at a time. Let's see if they can get past UCLA before we jump to college football playoffs. But I mean, a door just opened up for the Trojans, and they control their own destiny. And look, UCLA, they play this week, I know. They are a fantastic rushing attack, and the fact that they lost to Arizona, who has a poor defense, just shows anything can happen any given week. So we'll just see what happens. Only time will tell for the Trojans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the door is certainly open for the USC to go on a pretty big run here. Obviously, 9-1. There's some other stuff to happen. I think the most interesting thing is going to be what happens with Michigan and Ohio State. Because say USC does go on to win the Pac-12 at 11-1 or 12-1, considering it would be their 13th game, the Pac-12 championship. But say they go 12-1 after the Pac-12 championship, they're a one-loss team. But then you have teams like Michigan and Ohio State. Say Michigan goes to Ohio State and loses a really close game, and then you're stuck with Georgia undefeated. You have an undefeated Ohio State team that we assume they're going to win the Big Ten championship should they get there, beat Michigan, or vice versa. If Michigan beats Ohio State, we assume that they would win. The Big Ten West is pretty weak this season. But to continue more on that, Georgia goes undefeated. We're just all hypothetical, assuming everything goes according to plan in college football. We never know what's going to happen. But you have an undefeated Georgia, you have an undefeated Michigan or Ohio State, and then you have a one-loss Michigan or Ohio State. You can have a one-loss Tennessee also. Does USC get in over a one-loss Michigan and a one-loss Tennessee? That's going to be the biggest question. And we can't forget about TCU. TCU right now sitting at 10-0. They have a chance to go undefeated and win the Big 12. How did they look at that? I think there's no chance a one-loss USC could possibly get in over a undefeated TCU.
Well, also, you talked about the SEC a little bit. Let's say Georgia finishes the season undefeated, which looks pretty likely at this point. They will come out of the SEC East and make the SEC championship game. And then let's say LSU stays at the top of the SEC West. If LSU beats Georgia in that SEC championship game, I think a two-loss LSU team who is the SEC champion makes it over a one-loss USC team who makes the Pac-12 championship and eventually wins. Look, I mean, just the level of wins that LSU has had this season is way higher than the level of wins that USC will have if granted if they win out. So I mean, it's just a matter of strength of schedule and just the cards really need to deal in USC's favor if they want a shot at the college football playoffs, but it's looking better and better every week. I was very skeptical after the loss to Utah. It was just a rough patch, but look, USC's got lucky. They really shouldn't have won the past couple games. I mean, Arizona and Cal were lucky wins, and it's crazy to say that they shouldn't have beat Arizona or Cal. It's just the defense basically gave out, but Caleb Williams was Superman in those two games. So, I mean, USC shouldn't be in this position, but here we are. And look, if the college football playoffs is a possibility in Lincoln Riley's first year, it's just going to be huge, huge building block for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And I think I keep talking about the Big Ten. I think that's going to be the biggest question that the committee has. If this ends up with a one-loss USC team, which I'm a little nervous about these upcoming games. I think they have two tough teams, but more on that to come. I think if Michigan or Ohio State, if that is a close game, whoever the winner is, let it be Michigan, let it be Ohio State. If that is a close game, they're gonna have a hard time leaving either of those teams out of the college football playoff because both of those teams are very good and they both deserve to probably be there. Unless Michigan goes there and just gets absolutely dominated, or Michigan goes there and dominates, then certainly one of those teams could be left out. But I think at the end of the day, if that's a close game, which I think everyone expects it to be, I think both of those teams are going to end up in, assuming that whoever goes on to the Big Ten championship finishes out the undefeated season.
And you talked about TCU earlier. I mean, they've just rolled over the Big 12 this year. I don't see the way that if they go undefeated, which it looks like they pretty much will, because they play Baylor and Iowa State in the last two regular season games, and then they'll make the Big 12 championship at that point. Look, they've already steamrolled every team that they played in the Big 12. So I'm expecting, honestly, TCU should be the team that USC needs to lose more than a Michigan, Ohio State, because we know one of those two teams is going to lose because they play each other. So there's just so many things that need to go right for USC, and it's getting to a point where everyone's jumping the gun because you have two teams in conference losing the same weekend, and I don't know. There's just so much that needs to happen, and I'm very skeptical at this point if they can make it, but still, I'd be satisfied with the Rose Bowl appearance. I want to say it again. I said it last week. I will be satisfied if USC can make a college or a New Year's college football 6 bowl game.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think TCU must lose. If TCU loses a game, I think USC has the edge over them, should they both be one-loss teams. But I think when it comes down to it, my three that I think are definitely going to end up being in, assuming everything goes to plan, is Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan. I think this is the year that two Big Ten teams go in. Michigan and Ohio State, they both have looked incredible to this point. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be a great game in Columbus 2 weeks from 2 weeks from last weekend. And I think both of those teams are going to end up getting in. But more on TCU. TCU undefeated right now. If they go undefeated, the committee already has them fourth. So if they win out, they're in. Like, that is a given. But I think for USC, it's going to come down to if TCU loses a game to whoever it may be in the Big 12, which frankly they might not, and they might end up being in. They need TCU to lose one, and then it's going to come down to how does the committee look at a USC Pac-12 champion versus a one-loss Tennessee team. And I think at the end of the day, if they think that this Tennessee team is still very good despite that blowout loss to Georgia on the road, and that they don't think USC as a Pac-12 champion deserves it over them, then so be it. It is what it is, but I think it's going to be a tough decision for the committee no matter what. And also, I know I talk about Michigan and Ohio State a lot. I talk about how a one-loss Michigan or a one-loss Ohio State, I think, still should deserve to be in over USC if they have one loss. The committee, there's also a chance that the committee says, no, we're going to value the Pac-12 champion at one loss more than a Michigan or Ohio State team that doesn't win their conference. So there's a lot's going to play out over these next 3 weeks, and it should be really exciting. The Trojans certainly have a chance at the playoff. They need some stuff to happen, but definitely a lot to look forward to if you're a Trojan fan these 3 weeks coming up.
Yeah, you talked about Tennessee. I mean, that's a team that you can't forget about because, look, Georgia is the best team in the country, and you have to overlook the loss that Tennessee had to Georgia because I think Georgia is going to win the national championship again. They're clearly the best team, so I truly think that a one-loss Tennessee team, even though they're not going to win the SEC, deserves to make it over USC. But who knows? I'm not the committee. They have to see what they value more. If USC wins the Pac-12 championship, then so be it.
Yep. And we're talking a lot about the college football playoff looking way ahead. I think let's turn our focus to this past game, USC 55-17 over Colorado. Just an absolute blowout performance. But Caleb Williams in the offense, they continue to shine. It's been the story. Another great performance from him on Friday night, 268 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. But the defense, much better than they've been, but still one area of concern, I think, is on the ground. Alex Fontenot, the running back for Colorado, 20 carries, 108 yards and a touchdown, 5.4 yards per carry. And even Anthony Hankerson, 5 carries for 21 yards, still 4.2 yards per carries, although his carries were limited. It's certainly concerning to see that they were able to run the ball pretty well despite still getting dominated, only scoring 17 points. They had some success running the ball, and with the UCLA team coming up that has running back Zach Charbonnet, who's one of the best in all of college football. He's coming off of a performance which had 24 carries for 181 yards. He's already rushed for over 1,000 yards in the season. I think USC could be in some trouble if they can't stop the run.
Well, yeah, you talk about the run. I mean, last game against Cal, they only allowed 63 rushing yards. So I was surprised that Colorado was even able to muster 135 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But Colorado's quarterback play has just been atrocious all season. They've gone through 3 quarterbacks. They've gone through Brandon Miller. They've gone through JT Stroud, and went through Owen McCown. So they really haven't found any success in the passing game. So I wasn't expecting a passing performance, but I really thought that USC was going to be able to stop the run. And the first quarter was just a slugfest. I mean, it was 3-2 after the first, and USC was just not able to get stops. Colorado was able to convert on third down a couple times. But look, when you talk about the rushing defense, they don't really have much personnel on that. I mean, look, you have Tuli Tuipulotu, who's been fantastic. He's been one of the best college defenders all season. He leads the country with 11.5 sacks. He's been really just a game record for USC, but they don't really have any guys who I really have any trust in to be able to stop the run. I mean, Corey Foreman, who was the number 1 recruit 2 years ago, hasn't really done much this year. He's been in and out of the rotation. So I am worried about the personnel. And you talk about the run defense. The fact that they're allowing Colorado to have 135 yards is unacceptable. So it's just every week we talk about new issues with the defense. And it's just weird how much they regress throughout the season. I mean, the first 6 weeks, they look fantastic. And then it's just so unique to me to see a defense just collapse late in the season after finding so much success early on. So I don't know. It's just concerning to me. And this week they play UCLA, who's a top 5 rushing offense. I mean, it was just 2 weeks ago where they rushed for over 400 yards. So I am very worried about the run. And USC, if they can't stop the passing defense, they can't stop the run either. So I'm just worried at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is a UCLA team that features a very, very good offense. They've scored 28 or more points, and they've scored 20 or more points in every single game this season. So I think you have to be concerned about this defense going up against an offense that has just looked absolutely dominant. And despite the loss last week, still 28 points. But I mean, clearly UCLA's defense has not been up to standards lately. They've given up against Arizona 34 points in the loss. The week before they won 50 to 36, but still gave up 36 points. The week before that against Stanford not exactly a force in this Pac-12. They dominated them 38 to 13. But then against Oregon, they gave up 45 points. Utah, they gave up 32 points. Washington, they gave up 32 points. I mean, this is a team that gives up points. They can score the ball, but just like USC, they also give up points. So I mean, both defenses have been shaky. I think we could be in for a shootout. And if you're USC, you don't want that. You want your defense to come out and play well, but you have to be confident in your offensive quarterback, Caleb Williams, that if it does get to that, they can outscore anybody.
Yeah, definitely you want to be confident in the offense. But look, Friday was an emotional win for USC because a leader on the team, a beloved guy by all the fans, Travis Dye, is now out for the season after suffering a season-ending injury. And Lincoln Riley said it the best when he said this quote after the game. He said, Travis Dye, he was critical in helping establish a new culture at USC. We aren't where we are now without him. Travis Dye, I mean, he was just one of the first guys to come over. He's a veteran. He was a leader at Oregon, and he brought that leadership over to USC. He has experience in big games. And look, I talked about how I want Austin Jones more involved with Travis Dye, but I'm not sure if Austin Jones is capable of carrying the load. In 2021, when he was the lead back at Stanford, he wasn't really able to do much. He had 378 yards on 107 attempts, but the year before that, in the COVID-shortened season, he rushed for 550 yards and 9 touchdowns on 126 attempts. Stanford was a really bad team in 2021, and they were better in 2020, so maybe it was just that there was more talent on the offensive line in 2020, so that's why Jones was able to be successful. But I'm just not sure if Jones is able to carry the load. And we're just going to have to see, because this is a major loss for USC, because this is the guy that they trusted. Travis Dye was able to carry the load in many, many games, and he really put the team on his back at multiple times throughout the season. So this is just a major loss, and just at such a bad point of the year with 2 critical games coming up. So I'm just going to want to see how Lincoln responds and what he does, if he trusts Jones at the lead back, or maybe he's going to sprinkle in like he did after Dye got hurt with Raleek Brown and Barlow, who both, I mean, Raleek Brown was great in the game. He had 7 carries for 52 yards, and he also had a touchdown catch. So we'll see if it's going to be a running back by committee or if they just allow Jones to be the featured back.
Yeah, I mean, I think Travis Dye, obviously a huge loss for this offense, a really big piece in the running game and just the offense as a whole. But you're right, it's going to now fall on these guys. Austin Jones is a senior. He has a ton of experience, although he hasn't been the most productive throughout his career. this is his chance to step up. He knows it. And you also mentioned Raleek Brown, the freshman, and I think for USC, it sucks to lose Travis Dye, but to be able to get a guy like Raleek Brown this involved as a freshman, he's going to get more carries now. He's going to have to step up. It'll help him down the road in next season when it comes down to Raleek Brown potentially maybe taking over this starting running back job in the future. But I think for now, it's going to fall on Austin Jones, as you said. Raleek Brown also going to be sprinkled in. And also, I want to mention Caleb Williams as a runner. He's shown throughout this season that he can be effective. He can run the ball. He can make defenses pay when he gets into trouble on third down. But I think it's going to fall on these two running backs, and then Caleb Williams can also be a big contributor and help this run game without Travis Dye.
I mean, it also helps for USC that they have one of the best offensive lines in the Pac-12. The offensive line was honestly didn't have one of its best outings on Friday, but it still had a good outing for a team that Colorado, for as bad as the team it is, they still have a solid pass rush. And I mean, UCLA is going to give them trouble with the pass rush, I'm going to assume, because it's UCLA and they've been solid on defense all season. So if USC can hold up and allow these guys to just get a bulk of the carries and allow them just to eat in the backfield, I'm pretty confident in Raleek Brown and Austin Jones as a pair, but I'm not so confident in Austin Jones as a featured back.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's gonna be a committee, I think. And when it comes down to it, who's gonna step up? And I think Austin Jones right now is definitely the lead back with the loss of Travis Dye. But say a guy like Raleek Brown comes in and plays really well, he could take that job. I think it's gonna bode well for these guys, knowing that now they're not only just playing because they have to step in for the injured Dye, they're playing for who's gonna get this job, because I think it's an open job right now, and those two guys are certainly in line to get the bulk of the carries, and we'll see which one steps up to the challenge and takes that job ultimately. And down the season, it's going to be critical because they're going to have to lean on the run game. It can't all be Caleb Williams in the passing game, and especially Jordan Addison, as we haven't talked about yet. He came back, but he just had one catch for 2 yards. The receivers, Austin Jones, as a running back, had the most catches, just 4 catches. So the receivers, the receiving game could be a little shaky with the loss of Jordan Addison and him being banged up, and we'll see if these guys can step up. But certainly this running game is going to be critical down the stretch, especially when you start to play these better teams.
Well, I mean, in terms of Jordan Addison, Lincoln Riley did say that the plan was to ease Addison back into play after he suffered that leg injury against Utah. But I mean, this just makes a great storyline. You got a rivalry game coming up. It's the biggest USC UCLA game in years. You got the best receiver in the Pac-12 coming back. I mean, he played a few snaps last game and he had 1 catch and 2 targets. But you know what? I'm going to make a bold prediction on this podcast right now. I'm feeling it, and I have confidence when I say this. I think Addison goes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against that UCLA pass D. Look, guys got to step up with Travis Dye out, and I think that the receiving room, they've stepped up all year, and it's just going to make them more motivated. I mean, Travis Dye is a beloved guy on this team, and I think the guys are going to really play for him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right there. Travis Dye, a leader for this group, and a big loss, but it's going to be it's time to lean on other guys, and injuries happen. It's got to be the next man up mentality. The Trojans have to keep moving forward, and it comes this weekend against UCLA with their biggest game of the season, and the biggest game is always the next one. So this one, it just means more, and I think a win Saturday is going to go a long way for this team, because not just the momentum it's going to give them, it's going to put them in prime position to get to be in the Pac-12 championship, and it's huge. You can't say it enough. This is the biggest game of the season. They'll be in the Pac-12 championship with a win, and it'll give them a ton of confidence. And they have we don't want to get too far ahead, but they have a big one the week after with the Fighting Irish coming to town. So it starts with UCLA. These last 2 games are huge, and getting this win on Saturday is going to set them up to potentially go on a run to the college football playoff.
Well, I mean, I don't remember a time that USC had this much momentum around the football team, but beat UCLA, fight on, and hopefully we'll be recapping a win next week, but let's not get carried away.
Yep, USC heading to UCLA, 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific on Saturday night a huge game for the Trojans. We'll be back next week. Hopefully they get the victory. Signing off.